Hey folks, I have a project called Buff. This is an HTTP client for PHP, and I wanted to have some fun today. I wanted to try to upgrade that project to PHP 8 and PHP 8 only, as well as using Psalm as much as possible to try to make it as strict as possible. At the moment, that project is really experimental, I would say. There's not a lot of users. There's only one version that was published a year ago. So I don't think requiring PHP 8 will be a huge deal to anyone. I think that's a good project to have some fun. Both is, as I said, an HTTP client, and the goal is to have it as, made for humans. So the API is really, simple to use and obvious to read. So this is an example with Buff, and this is the same example using Guzzle. And as we can see, it makes more sense. The idea is to use a lot of autocompletion and be able to not deduce, but instead see what happens. So here's the project. Let's go ahead and upgrade that to PHP 8 only. And what we'll do is we'll run composer update. Just make sure that I'm on the latest version. Everything is up to date, perfect. Let's run composer update. Okay, we have problems, that's not an issue. Since we're using PHP 8, there are some dependencies that may require some upgrades. Maybe this package is required by Guzzle. So let's debug that. Let's run composer why, and that will tell us why this package is required in my project. It's directly required actually in the required dev section. Composer required. Oh yes, that is a tool that makes sure that any class that I use in my project is actually explicitly required here, which is good because it makes sure that there is no dependency issue. So my guess is they either provided a new version compatible with PHP 8 or it's not compatible yet with PHP 8. I can see the latest release is from last year, so that's not that good. And we can see that it requires PHP 7.4. So we are not in luck. Let's have a look if there's any pull request. Yes, allowing PHP 8. It seems to be still a work in progress. Oh, right. I had this problem in another project. This library is not compatible yet with PHP 8. So I would say this composer required checkup package is not that essential for us to work. We can remove that for now and give it a try. Let's see if there's anything blocking us. We have doctrine coding standard, which is required by my package called hardmod, and that one I upgraded to PHP 8, so we can switch to the new version and run the update again. Okay, now we have Psalm blocking the update because again of the glob library. I hope that Psalm is compatible with PHP 8. Sorry. Let's have a look. So we have a release that was 16 days ago, and it seems to allow PHP 8 now. That release is 4.3. So we are definitely using an older version. Let's upgrade to Psalm 4. And let's use the latest. Okay, now it's working. Great. We can see that many things are upgrading. Let's run the test now. Perfect. Everything is still running. What we can do now is run Psalm and check if we have any issue. Good. Usually when you upgrade Psalm or PHP Stan or the PHP CS Fixer and other static analysis tools, you sometimes get more errors because these tools have upgraded and they detect more error cases. That's not the case here, so that's good. We can also have a look at the coding standard. I'm using the Pretty tool and we are good. So right now, our tool is compatible with PHP 8, our project. So that's perfect. What I'm going to do is to create a new branch and name it PHP 8, nothing too original, and require PHP 8. So I'm doing a commit here because I want to stop at a point, like a checkpoint in games. So this is a good state because tests are passing, the static tools are okay, let's save, and now we can play and change and break whatever we want. There's always a save point to go back to. So now let's have a bit of fun. We are now using PHP 8. What can we change in the code that's specific to PHP 8? So we can see that PHP Storm has some ideas. Let's have some fun with that. We can see that PHP Storm can add the property type. Oh, and that's interesting. It did not add just client interface. It added that part. And I'm guessing this is because of the constructor. Yes. PHP Storm is being clever. It knows that it can be either a client interface or directly a client class, but I want to type against the interface always. So I will remove that because I know that this class extends or actually implements the interface. So we are good here. I can remove the PHP doc because it's no longer useful. I try to remove as much as I can in those cases. Instead of having duplicated information, might as well have the cleanest code possible. Or sorry, the shortest, the least variables. This one may be a bit harder because we have, let's use again PHP Storm suggestion. We may want to keep the PHP doc because it adds more information. It tells us that the keys are strings, so it's a string indexed array, and the values can be strings or arrays. If we were to type that properly, we would explain and document what kind of array, but let's do that later. So far, good. Let's do the same thing here. Here again, I will not remove the documentation because it contains more information that is available in the type. Maybe I could do that, and I'm not sure if PHP Storm will support that. Oh yeah, it does. So the text is correctly related to the property. So I can do that. That's better. Let's do the same thing here. Again, I will keep the documentation because it adds information. And we can see here, so these were PHP 4 type information. But this is a PHP 8 because it uses, mixed types. So it can be a string, an array, or null. So this is PHP 8 only. And we'll have the same thing here. So this one can be removed. Later, we could add more information about what that kind of array it is, So this, all good. We have a warning there. Oh. Yeah, let's ignore that kind of warning. That's not related to our project. What can we change here? Same problem here. I'm guessing the file, yeah, the interface is defined twice because of a hack made in Guzzle. So what I will do is disable that inspection so that we don't have too many errors on the right. That way we can clearly see where we can improve stuff. We can add the parameter type mixed here, and we can see that it changed the documentation here. So I don't want that. That's duplicating the code. Same here, we can remove that. And it added the return type. We can remove that. And now we're good. So let's add mixed manually to avoid. We will keep that because again, it adds more information. Same here, but here we could add array or string, remove that. I'm mostly looking at the warnings. I love when I can remove the whole documentation of a method. It's much, simpler that way. I love doing that. Less code is always better. Okay, so this is an interesting one. PHP Storm tells me that I can add an attribute. Let's do that. Oh, wow. Okay, that's the first time I'm doing that. That attribute, array shape, is provided by PHP Storm, and it lets us, so this is a PHP 8 attribute, and it lets us document the type of the array that is returned. And it's interpreted by PHP Storm, and I think Psalm parses that as well and supports it. I'm not sure. Let's check that out. So let's check that out here. I think Psalm PHP Storm attribute. I'm pretty sure there was a blog post about it. PHP Storm. While I don't agree with the decision, I can change so that PHP Storm users are happy. The compromise of 2020. There we go. So using these PHP 8 attributes now results in the same behavior as the equivalent doc block. So Psalm supports the PHP Storm attributes, but it supports immutable, pure, deprecated, and no return. I'm not sure it supports, it does not support array shape and expected value. So this attribute will only be useful for PHP Storm. What we could do is document the same thing using, in Psalm. So actually we could do that, but I'm afraid this will be better to start by documenting all of this, because it's extracting the information for those properties and putting them here. So let's remove that for now, and we will improve the documentation for these properties first. And then what's generated here will be much more documented. Let's remove, it's a namespace attribute, so it was imported here. Now, what we want to do here is always run the tests. Well, okay. Yes, that's okay. That's really interesting. I don't know if you've played with PHP 7.4's properties yet, but if you have, you may have met that kind of error. So what I did is I added, for example, here, I added the property type. When you add a property type in PHP 7.4 and PHP 8, that property is, has to be of type client interface. And if it is not, for example, let's say I don't set it in the constructor, well, what value does it have? It doesn't accept null, right? So it's in a state that is called uninitialized. And whenever a property is uninitialized, it cannot be accessed. It must be initialized first. So in our case, the client property will be initialized in the constructor, so we are good. This one is good. This one is initialized with an empty array. We're good. This one too, but those properties, they accept null, sure, but we don't initialize them to null. And that's a problem because they start uninitialized. So what we want to do is set a default value. I'm guessing we could set null, but I just want to make sure to see when they are used. Yeah, I think it's safe to put null in there. Let's put null here. So by default, the HTTP client will have no proxy information, no proxy configuration, and no parameters. We can see that PHP Storm, oh sorry, that's not PHP Storm, that's the EA extension, which is a PHP Storm plugin, adds a warning, and it says we can remove the null assignment because all properties are always null. It expects all properties to be null, but it's not the case, and I think that's a false warning, that's a false positive. So I don't like having warnings there. I will suppress the warning. Now, if we run the test again, we are good. So we are going to commit PHP property types, PHP types. We could also do the same in the HTTP response class. As you can see, this is a very simple package. We have only 2 classes. Here we can return mixed. And here we can return mixed as well. Really simple class. So let's start very simple. What I will do is I will amend the previous commit because I don't want to create another commit. I just created the commit a bit too early. So that's fine. I can amend that, and that will edit the previous commit to include my modifications. So this is the previous commit here. And that will add what I changed here. So that's exactly what I want. Amend commit. And we are good. If we look at the Git history, we can see only one commit named add strict.php type. So let's have a bit more fun. Let's have a look at the headers field. Maybe we can make that a bit stricter. We can see that the key is a string and the values are either a string or an array. But whenever we set headers, and I hope I'm not mistaken, but when we set header, we can set a string or an array of strings. I'm not sure if it can be an array of integers. I would expect that to be an array of strings. Let me give you an example really quick. Let's say I set a header, which is what can I do, like content type, and I can say application/JSON. So that's how you pass or get JSON, return JSON as a response. But that can also be an array. I'm not sure if that header makes sense. Let's find a HTTP header just to find an example. Yeah, accept. I think it's a good example of, or accept encoding. Let's use, oh, look this one. It's set multiple times. Oh. No, okay, I think I'm saying something wrong. You can't have a header with multiple values, but HTTP header, multiple values. They are merged together with a comma. So if you can't have a header with multiple, like the same header multiple times, but you can have multiple values in there by separating them with a comma. And Guzzle, which Buff uses internally, allows having multiple values by using an array, and it will join these values by adding a comma. So this will be turned into content type, and then like this. Okay. And as I said, I don't think you can have numbers in there, or I don't think it should be a valid value. We could have a look at the Guzzle documentation. Headers. Each key is the name of a header, and each value is a string or array of strings. Perfect. That's it. Each value is either a string or an array of string. That's a better change here. Now we can try to run Psalm and see if it detects any mistake. All good. We can also see where that field is used with header. So the value is a string or an array of string. That notation can be improved. Here I'm saying it's an array that is not indexed by a string. but in Psalm, there's a better way to document that. I think it's called a list. So let's have a look. Atomic types, scalar types, arrays. So that's not, I'm pretty sure you just have to say list, but I want to make sure. But this is plugins. I'm not sure if I'm in the right page. There you go. Array types. List. I think it could be much simpler if I used the that kind of that kind of annotation. But it's not the strictest way. It seems to, that kind of annotation seems to allow an array key that could be either an int or a string. If we want to be stricter, list is a bit better. So we will change that to be list of string, and we will change here as well to make sure that we have the strictest type possible. Good. And headers are also used here. Okay, all good. Let's run Psalm. Perfect. And test just to make sure, all good. So our headers are properly typed. Now this one is properly typed as well, this one too. Now the proxy. So it's either null or a string or an array. The array could be all of this. So first I will reorganize and like reorder from simplest to most complex, just so that it's more readable. Null string array. And it's an array of strings, so that's the key. And the value is a string or an array. Could it be the same thing? I think it's the same thing, a string or a list of strings. Let's check out proxy or an array to specify different proxies for different protocols. So that's an example with a string value. That's an example with an array of string and string value. So either it's a string or it's an array indexed by a string and the value is a string, right? So it's not a list because it's indexed by the scheme. Is there a way, like the alternative to list, associative array? Object-like arrays. Yeah, it's like this, but we don't know. This is useful. That notation is useful when you know which keys you have in the array. So we don't know which keys we will have because the keys can be HTTP, HTTPS, and anything, any scheme, any HTTP scheme. So we can't do that. So let's keep string and array of string. Now let's use that same annotation whenever that field is accessed with single proxy. So you have a single proxy or with multiple proxies, and that's where, oh, actually it seems that the values are very strictly defined. It's HTTP, HTTPS, and no. So let's make that very strict. It's not any array. It's an array containing keys. HTTP, it's a string. HTTPS, it's a string, and no, it's a string as well. Let's make sure it's right. So we'll copy the type. Sounds good. Oh, and this is an array. Oh, right. This is an array of domains that are not proxied. Let's fix that. No, it's a string. It's a list of strings. So it's a very complex type, but we are able to document it entirely, and I think that is pretty nice. PHP Storm does not understand the annotation here, which is too bad, but if we were using just that, I think it would work. Yeah, but it does not understand the whole Psalm annotation yet. That's too bad. But when we run Psalm, it should work. Now, when this property is accessed, it's here. Perfect. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm making a mistake here. That is always an array, so it cannot be null or a string. And actually, sorry, that's the value that goes into no. So it's just a string array, a list of strings. Better. And it's understood by PHP Storm correctly. Awesome! Let's run Psalm. Okay. We can actually enable Psalm in the project. Let's do that. That avoids running that in the terminal manually. Inspections. And I think that's quality tools. Yep. Psalm. And we do have a configuration file. We are in buff. This will be a warning. And okay. Now let's give it a try. Let's assign something invalid to this property. Let's remove that. And we should have a warning from PHP Storm. From Psalm. So Psalm is not. I hope Psalm is working. Oh, we missed that type. Right? So I'm not sure if Psalm is actually running. It's enabled. Ah. Psalm. Okay, that should be better. Let's give it a try again. Let's add ABC. That should not be okay. Oh, wait, no errors found. Psalm should not accept that. This is not valid. I hope this is a correct syntax. Because this is what I did, right? Maybe I'm not typing the variable correctly. Property var. This is what I'm using here. Var. And this one. What are you doing, Psalm? Let's say we remove that. So now it's complaining correctly. I hope. Let's do that. Yeah, I think this is because. Oh no. Okay, so I'm not sure why Psalm is not being really strict here. Let's try something that should trigger an error. Yeah, okay. I think Psalm seems to accept any extra property, which is too bad. Array shapes. Okay, so let's move on. That should not be valid. But let's move on. Let's do the same with the query params, and let's just check the documentation from Guzzle and see what it accepts. It's an associative array, so keys are strings, and values can be anything that goes in the URL, basically. So yeah, it could be a string, it could be a number, I guess. It could be, so let's duplicate that. It could be, can it be a string? Yeah, it can be a string. It can be like you can pass the whole string directly. So if it's an array, the key is unknown, but it has to be a string. The key is a string, and the value can be a string, an integer, a float, an array, can be anything. So what we'll do here is we just use mixed and be done with it. I'm sure it could be a bit more strict, but I think that's okay for now. Now let's see if we can add more types here. We will not allow null, and we should be good. Okay. In case you may be wondering, I'm adding extra information to the PHP 8 types. And that's useful for users of the library, so that, let's say, they pass an array that contains oh, and the key can be a number. It's definitely a valid thing to do, right? Oh, maybe not. Wait. So these are the query parameters, and I can't have, yeah, I have to have a key, so I have to have a string value. Okay, so let's say a user passes an int value. That's not allowed by the Psalm type, but they have to use Psalm to catch that error, right? So if they don't use Psalm, that will not be used at all, and there will be no warning whatsoever. But that will be useful for the users that do use Psalm, and I hope some of them do. At least I will. So it's not magic, it doesn't solve every problem, but that's still a bit better. So now that we have improved our types, let's have a look at this class as well. This one is completely typed. This one too. So getData returns whatever was returned by the HTTP response. It can be really anything, I guess, because we do decode the JSON. So it can be a string value, an integer, an array containing anything. So mixed is, it's fair. And same here. Let's add stricter Psalm types. Oops. We don't really care about that, sorry, but let's commit anyway. Now, is there anything we can use in PHP 8 or Psalm to make that a bit better? I'm not sure. So what we can do is go over the PHP 8 new features, and I will use the Stitcher blog. This is a really good blog if you want to learn about what's new in PHP 8. This is a blog written by Brent, and he's a really good blogger. You can find anything in there. It's really well written. So we have union types. That's what we've used so far. All good. There's the JIT, but we don't really care in our project. That's more for users. The null safe operator. I'm not sure if we have that kind of pattern in the library. Let's have a look. So we'll look in the whole project, and I usually use that kind of pattern. So that's used, but that's not my project. I need to exclude, so that this is the vendor directory. What I will do is I will exclude that directory from the project. That way I can search only in the project, or I can search in the project directory. And that will include the vendor directory, and it's not at the moment. But anyway, in the project, we don't use that pattern, so not useful here. Named arguments. So that's a fun one. That's a very interesting one, because this is sometimes a good alternative to stuff like this. So let me, and maybe that's a whole new way about, implementing the HTTP client. Let me show you an example. Let's say I create a GET response with, this one may be better. Let's post some JSON. So this is how I post JSON to using the HTTP client. But what if instead I could do, and let's say I want to have a header. So let's say with header, and let's use user agent. That's me, Mario. So that's Mario, the user agent. What if instead of that we could write post, so URL JSON in header whoops because my goal with the project is to have to ease discovery of what's possible. I don't like going into the Guzzle documentation because there are so many options. Like let's say I want to use the proxy thing. I need to know that I need to put an array and the key is named proxy. Or I need to set JSON, I need to use the key JSON. That's hard to discover because I don't know automatically what's the name of the key that I need to use. And thanks to that auto-completion, I can really easily, send JSON. But what if I used name parameters, like a huge method that accepts all those parameters, optionally? Will PHP Storm autocomplete them? I'm not sure, but that could be an alternative. Because then it's easy to discover options. I could just, type that and search for the proxy parameter. So let's give it a try and let's try to implement that. Let's do a post method. We will have the URL. We can use data and make it optional. Oh, wait. I see some problems here. Let's make that optional. Yes, mixed allows null, obviously. Let's use the JSON parameter. Let's use proxy. Parameter. All of that. And then what we can do is we could so the method will be post, the URL is that, and request options will be an array that could contain, I'm not sure if that makes sense. Oh yeah, I know. Like request options could be how do we get the arguments? I always forget that. PHP get method arguments. Yeah, func get args. And then we just unset the URL key. Oops. Oh, we don't even need that. So let's just give this a try. I will give this a try, okay? Let's just do a new test. Oops. Test 1. And we'll have a mock response. Okay, so PHP Storm has a bit of trouble indenting all of that. Header should be, sorry, let's leave that. Let's use header. Let's debug. Oh, I don't have Xdebug installed on PHP 8 yet. So that's okay. We'll do the old way, which is var dump and die. So this is what we have in func get args. We have the arguments indexed by a number, but I would like to get them indexed by the parameter name. So there's no change to funget args. Are oblivious to the collection of unknown. Okay. Oh, right. We can collect those via variadic parameters, but I don't want to use that. I want autocompletion. What I could do though, it's a bit more work, but I could have let's remove data for now. Let's keep it simple, like JSON, JSON, header. Right? And then I will have the same thing for proxy. And when I call it here, I'm using URL, I'm using JSON, I'm using header, but I'm not using proxy. Is there any? Yes, there is autocompletion. So that's quite a good experience as a user, right? And let's check the response. Okay, just void. Yeah, that's working. So that's PHP 8 allows a very different API for our project. And maybe that's a good alternative, you know? Because let's say I find that in a project, it's easy. So I have two requirements. One, easy to understand, and two, easy to discover. Like discovery is very important. So this is important whenever you read code, and this one is important whenever you write code. This one, objective complete, because you definitely see what every option is, right? The second one was the problem. And even with Gazelle, you have array keys and it's like that and it's all good, you know. You have the objective one is perfect, but discovery is a mess because you don't have any auto completion. But here you do. Maybe that could even be better than the current way, which is with header. And with that approach, I may even be able to generate the code here, because this is a large number of parameters. So I could add them manually, but what I want is to support all the options of Gazelle, right? And there are quite a few. So maybe I could auto-generate that method and all of its parameters based on what Gazelle allows. Then I can reconstruct the array and pass that to Gazelle. I love how new PHP features can sometimes provide new solutions for implementing it, like not really implementing, but solving problems. And I'm really excited by that idea. And I think that approach could be useful as well for some other projects. And you know, I remember when the RFC was discussed, some people said, well, name parameter will encourage methods with a large number of parameters, and that's not good. And, you know, in theory, I agree. It's not ideal, but in reality, it already exists. And there are some use cases where, you know, you have a lot of options. And so we have to deal with that. The complexity exists. We can't just say that's poorly implemented. And actually, that's a very common problem in Symfony. In Symfony, what they do is, can I find an example real quick? Let's Symfony components. I'm sure we can find an example real quick. they have that problem all over the place. Maybe this one. Documentation. Where they want to be able to, let people. They want to be able to add new parameters and new options whenever they want. And so one way is to, let's say you have a method and you want to add a new parameter in the future. Well, you can add a new parameter, but then it breaks backward compatibility because new method calls can fail. So you can make that optional. But what if somebody extends the method and so on and so on? So what they do very often is that they have a system of options. And I'm trying to find an example. Well, the HTTP client, I think, will be also a very good example of that. You can see there already. So that's the configuration. Okay, that's an example. So they do exactly like Guzzle. They have an array of options because they want to be able to add new options whenever they want without breaking backward compatibility. So having an array of options is a very common pattern in Symfony and in other libraries. And maybe instead of using arrays now, we could use variadics and named parameters to solve that. I'm saying maybe because I haven't thought that through, and maybe it will still pose issues with backward compatibility, and maybe we won't get the nice autocompletion that we get here, but that's something to think about. So I'm going to stop here for today, because maybe I will rewrite the package to use that pattern. I don't know. I'm going to think about that for a few days, but so far we've done some progress with PHP 8, and it was fun to see what we can do with it. We haven't even, checked the rest of the article. Have a look at it yourself. You can see some pretty nice things. Actually, I'm thinking this one maybe. Oh no, we can't do that because we have. So anyway, that's okay. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you.